Imagine walking into a crowded coffee shop on a busy Monday morning. You scan the room quickly. There's the guy in the expensive suit checking his phone, the girl with purple hair typing furiously on her laptop, the elderly man sitting alone by the window. Within seconds, your brain has already created stories about each of them. The suit guy? Probably arrogant. Purple hair girl? Definitely rebellious. The old man? Lonely, maybe forgotten by his family. But what if I told you that everything you just assumed could be completely wrong? What if that expensive suit belongs to someone who grew up in poverty and still sends half his salary to support his parents? What if the girl with purple hair is actually a software engineer working on technology to help disabled children? And what if that old man isn't lonely at all, but is a retired teacher who comes here every day to write letters to his former students who are now successful doctors and engineers around the world? This is exactly what Tim Tebow challenges us to think about in his powerful book, Look Again. How often do we judge people in just a few seconds? By their clothes, by their confidence, by how loudly or quietly they speak. We've all done it. I've done it. You've probably done it today without even realizing it. But here's the thing. The first thing you notice about someone is rarely the full story. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have people misunderstood you based on a single interaction? Maybe they thought you were rude when you were actually just having the worst day of your life. Maybe they assumed you were unfriendly when you were simply dealing with anxiety. The truth is, people are so much more than what they appear to be on the surface. Tim Tebow shares a story that really stuck with me. He talks about meeting a young man who seemed angry and distant during their first encounter. Everyone around this guy had written him off as a troublemaker. But when Tim Tebow took the time to actually listen, he discovered that this young man had been sleeping in his car for weeks because his family had kicked him out. He wasn't angry, he was scared, hungry, and desperately trying to figure out how to survive while still attending college. A quiet person may not be shy. They might be processing grief. A struggling student may not be lazy. They might be working 2 jobs to support their family. A person who seems distant may be fighting an invisible battle that would break most of us. You never know what someone is going through. Tim Tebow shares real-life stories showing how people often smile in public while suffering in private. I remember reading about a woman who always seemed perfectly put together at work. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, confident presentations. Her colleagues thought she had it all figured out. What they didn't know was that she was going through a messy divorce, fighting for custody of her children, and barely sleeping 3 hours a night. Her polished exterior was actually her way of holding herself together when everything else was falling apart. This is why first impressions can be so dangerous. They happen automatically. Our brains are wired to make quick judgments for survival. But true understanding, that requires intention. It requires us to pause, to ask questions, to listen without immediately forming opinions. It requires us to remember that everyone we meet is carrying something we know nothing about. But here's where it gets even more challenging. We don't just judge people, we label them. And when we label someone, we reduce them to one small part of who they are and ignore their potential. Think about the labels you've carried in your life. Maybe you were called the quiet one, or the troublemaker, or not college material. How did those labels make you feel? Did they limit what you believed you could achieve? Labels are incredibly powerful, and unfortunately they're often wrong. Tebow tells the story of a young girl who was labeled as learning disabled in elementary school. Teachers and even her parents began to treat her as if she couldn't achieve much academically. But one teacher decided to look again. Instead of focusing on what she couldn't do, this teacher discovered that the girl was actually incredibly creative and had a unique way of processing information. Today, that learning disabled girl is a successful architect who designs buildings that help people with disabilities navigate spaces more easily. Labels limit people. Understanding sets them free. When we take the time to really see someone, beyond the surface, beyond the assumptions, beyond the labels, we give them permission to be their full selves. We create space for their potential to flourish. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds nice in theory, but how do I actually do this in real life? I'm busy. I don't have time to deeply understand every person I meet. And you're right. We can't have deep, meaningful conversations with everyone, but we can change our default setting from judgment to curiosity. Instead of immediately deciding who someone is, we can remind ourselves that there's always more to the story. Tebow suggests something really simple but profound. The next time you catch yourself making a quick judgment about someone, just pause and ask yourself, what don't I know about this person's story? You don't need to find out the answer right away. Just acknowledging that there is more to discover can shift your entire perspective. But here's where Tebow's message becomes truly transformative. He talks about seeing people through a spiritual lens, recognizing that every person has inherent purpose, dignity, and worth, regardless of what the world might say about them. What the world may reject, God still chooses. This perspective changes how we treat others. Less judgment, more grace, more love. When you see people the way God sees them, compassion becomes natural. You start to notice the person everyone else ignores. You become the one who speaks kindly to the cashier who's having a rough day. You're the colleague who checks in on someone who seems overwhelmed. You become someone who actively chooses empathy over assumption. I think about my own life and the people who chose to look again when others had written me off. The teacher who saw potential when my grades were terrible. The friend who saw kindness when others saw awkwardness. The mentor who saw leadership qualities when I felt completely lost. These people didn't just change my day, they changed my entire trajectory. You don't have to change the whole world. You just need to change someone's world. And it starts with something as simple as choosing to see them. Really see them, instead of just looking at them. Kindness costs nothing, but its impact can be priceless. A simple smile to someone who looks sad. A genuine "how are you" to a colleague who seems stressed. Taking a moment to listen when someone needs to talk. These small acts of intentional understanding can literally save lives. Tim Tebow shares a powerful story about a young man who was planning to end his life. He had decided that nobody cared about him, that he was invisible to the world. But on his way to carry out his plan, a stranger, someone who had never met him before, stopped and simply said, "Hey, are you okay? You look like you could use someone to talk to." That moment of being truly seen by another human being changed everything. Today, that young man is alive, thriving, and dedicating his life to helping others who feel invisible. Your value is not defined by the world's expectations, and neither is anyone else's. Every person you encounter has a story worth knowing, dreams worth supporting, and potential worth nurturing. The question is, will you take the time to look again? As we wrap up this journey through Tim Tebow's powerful message, I want you to think about someone in your life right now. Maybe it's a family member you've been frustrated with. Maybe it's a co-worker who annoys you. Maybe it's a stranger you see regularly but have never really noticed. What would happen if you chose to look again? What would you discover if you approach them with curiosity instead of judgment? Humanity begins where judgment ends. Every time we choose understanding over assumption, every time we choose compassion over criticism, every time we choose to see the person behind the appearance, we make the world a little more human. The next time you think you understand someone at first glance, remember Tim Tebow's challenge. Pause, take a breath, and look again. Because the first thing you notice about someone is rarely the full story. And the full story? That's where the magic happens. That's where connection begins. That's where we discover that we're all more alike than different, all struggling with something, all hoping to be seen and understood. So, go ahead, look again. The person you thought you knew might just surprise you. And in the process of truly seeing them, you might discover something beautiful about yourself too.